We were talking about 2027 politics, of course, a conversation that has inundated the polity over the past couple of months. And of course, it is a conversation that continues to gain a lot more momentum. Well, let's speak about the position of the North and some of the emerging conversations around the thinking of Northern Nigeria when it comes to what is at stake and what is on the table come 2027. And we can now speak to the spokesperson of the Arewa Consultative Forum, Professor Tukur Mohammed-Baba is joining us for tonight's conversation. And pleased to see you as always, Prof. Thank you so much for stopping by this evening.
Thanks for inviting me. Good to be here.
Right. First and foremost, just zooming out. A lot of people would say the North has become the noisemakers distracting government from governance. Do you think that that's a fair description of what's been happening?
That's not, for two reasons. One, you shouldn't speak of the North, you should speak of Nigeria. I think there is a lot of, let me say, confusion. Maybe some of it deliberate, that it is about the position of the North. It is not the position of the North. It's a national problem. Whoever rules this country is ruling not on behalf of the North, but on behalf of all the country. Whatever problems anybody have, every portion, every section of Nigeria has problems. They would like to see legitimately addressed by the political leaders of the country. When you speak about the North, I don't represent the North, I represent Nigeria. My organization, the Arewa Consultative Forum, does not take partisan positions on who to support or who not to support. We look for national affairs and see how they affect the North. We want to see how they can be resolved, and not just in the interest of the North, in the interest of everybody. For example, if you have a country that is divided into the haves and the have-not, you have a country where resources are disproportionately allocated to one or any section of the country to the detriment of another. Everybody is concerned. Let's take another example, insecurity, which is a very basic and major problem for the North now. Yeah, so many people are dying in the North because of insecurity and the inability of successive governments in the last 10 years to tackle this monster, or let's say in the last 14 years, to tackle this monster. It's affecting everybody, it's not just the North. And to promote an idea that the North is the noisemaker and so on, it's not true. The North is a stakeholder. And everybody is suffering in this country as a result of certain fundamental policies put in place by this government. From the word go. And it's not just the North that is suffering.
Some say, the North is the loudest voice in the conversation.
Maybe the North is the one that feels shortchanged in the allocation of resources for development, in suffering from insecurity, and so on. So everybody is actually making noise. Even those accusing the North are also making noise by their accusation.
Some are making the correlation that this noise making is because of the North's affinity to power. And just 2 years after President Muhammadu Buhari left office, all of a sudden, there's this amplified concern about insecurity, about the economy and all of these things.
It's not true. Even when the late President Buhari was in power, a lot of Northerners have been complaining about being shortchanged, about his policies favoring one region of the country or another. Look, this is politics. It's a democracy. When you invest your votes in certain parties, in certain individuals, you have a legitimate right to certain expectations of being served by their being in power. If it's not, you have a right to complain. There are different times in this country, in the political history of this country, different sections of the country have complained about people being in power. So I don't see anything new in any noise coming from any part of the country. I am not fixated on this North-South divide. I think the debate is being done at the expense of governance, at the expense of the ordinary person in the street, who has a right to being served by government in power without regards to religion, without regards to ethnicity, without regards to geographical locations and so on. A government is for the people. It is a government by the people, and it should be seen for the people. If anybody is making demands, shouting to the rooftop, I think it's an entitlement. Hey, listen, it's democracy, and shouting complaints comes with the territory. Right. And so those people
Nothing
in
out
power,
of the ordinary for you.
Sorry?
Nothing out of the ordinary as far as
no,
the
not as far as I'm concerned. What is out of the ordinary is surprise that people are complaining, that some people are complaining. Why not? Right. This is what it is all about. This is what governance is all about. And if we keep going without complaints, you see, sometimes when you have political conflict, it's actually functional for the system. Because otherwise, those in power will go on as if nothing is happening, will go on as if it's right. They will develop what we call a security, they have what I think the word for it is, they believe in themselves, and that's a mistake.
A false sense of security?
False sense of security. You remember in Shakespeare's Macbeth, in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, when the soothsayer told him that security gives way to conspiracy, because Caesar felt he was above conspiracy. Caesar felt he was unchallengeable. And this is the kind of thing we are seeing in this country. So people think you should not complain because they are in power. So are we supporting emperors? Are we stamping democracy? Shouldn't we expect criticisms? The Americans have a saying, nothing fails like success. So when you are in power, you think what you think you are doing right, and no human being is 100% right. Then you go on making mistakes to your own detriment and to the detriment of people you are ruling, and so on, who have a legitimate expectations to expect fairness and equity, if not equality. At least there must be equity. In the absence of these, people have a right to complain.
And talk to me, Prof, about 2027, because that is the one thing that has been dominating national discourse, right? What is your 2 cents about the way the conversation is unfolding?
Again, I think the conversation is being held. The conversation is being held at the expense of governance. I mean, we are 2 years into this regime. Another 2 years before there is election. So what is happening is politicians are hoodwinking us into starting the campaign far too early, far ahead of the whistle by INEC. And of course, one is surprised that INEC has not stepped in. There is this increasing frenzy about 2027. What happens between now and then? What happens to some of the policies, impactful policies for which people are suffering for God's sake in this country? The removal of fuel subsidy from day one, and then almost the very next week, after the inauguration in 2023, actually the campaign for re-election started. I am personally not impressed. I think the people are being sold dummies. That is all about 2027. It is not. It is about here and now. It is about what you deliver, what you have delivered from 2023 to date, and what you are likely to do. For God's sake, nobody will deny the suffering of the people as a result of fuel subsidy removal of subsidy from electricity and power, removal of subsidy, the floating of the naira, and so many other things that this regime has been, so to speak, almost a messianic complex that they are right. They are not right. Nobody is right all over. Let's concentrate. I will prefer to see a concentration of on the alleviation of the suffering of the people, on the difficulties they have encountered. For example, I don't see any presidential candidate coming to say, we'll return subsidy. But it is not so much whether you return it or not. What other measures are you taking to cushion the effect on people who are suffering as a result of the policies? I mean, there is a lot that can be done to alleviate the people's suffering. Let's see people in governance concentrating on that rather than bombarding our ears about 2027 campaigning for office, that I will do one term or the other, things that are not in the Constitution. And, it's as if the people are being sold a dummy.
Right. Do you think there is some validity in the argument of the current government in power that, it is at the receiving end of all of this distraction and heightened political tempo, so much so that people are almost forced to become hyper-focused on all the negatives without giving the government any credit whatsoever with regards to what the reforms could actually achieve at the end of the day?
In my opinion, success speaks for itself. Those who make for success do not have to shout about themselves. You get me? The government may be, but I think, in fact, the government is in the forefront of selling this dummy to the people. That it's all blaming somebody else, it's all saying you are distracting and so on. Hey, if you are driving, you see a lot of things by the roadside. You don't stop to remove them. You keep driving, keep your eyes on the road. Be on the alert. That is how the politics should be. If the government thinks it is receiving unnecessary flack, then it should change its strategy, communicate with the people, show it means well, and that the conditions or their policies being put on ground to alleviate the suffering of the people. I'm sure most people in this country, the most ordinary people, will not worry if they can afford the very basic things of life. Water, electricity, sleeping, housing. If they have security in their life, many people will not bother who is in government. And so, in my opinion, if the government is complaining, then I should say they should know that it comes with the territory.
The president used the word gangup, or at least some of his representatives used the word gangup, considering what's happening on the coalition side of the conversation. Do you think there is a gang-up against the Tinubu administration?
There is a gang-up. There is a gang-up against everybody, including a gang-up by government official itself. The fact that the government
against
the political appointees, the government itself, to gang up against the people and say the people have no right to complain, that is a gang up. It's a dialectical thing. It's a dialectical relationship for every, and government should not be a zero-sum game where, you shouldn't be subjected to scrutiny. No, the government itself is guilty of ganging up against the people by some of its policies that are hurting. Almost everybody in this country is hurting. Every corner, north, south, southwest, northeast, northwest, south, everybody is suffering, It's nobody would say, it's all glory. Maybe a few government officials who are close to power and they don't need to worry with their convoys, the gang of convoys with 20 SUVs, while you and I are struggling to put fuel at close to 1,000 naira in our cars. The ordinary taxi driver in Abuja, in Kaduna, in Sokoto, the farmer who needs just 1 gallon of fuel to power his or water pump for irrigation. Right now, let me give you an example. There is a policy of grain import that is hurting farmers terribly. Because as I am talking to you, a bag of maize is probably less than 40,000 naira. A bag of fertilizer, if available, is in the region of 60,000 naira and above. For God's sake, even if the farms are secure, who will go to farm? At what cost? Yeah, we see an immediate drop in the price of foodstuff, but let's be proactive. What is going to happen in 1 year's time at the end of this season if it happens that everybody relax and say, there is no point in farming because we'll be losing. So, we have to look at the whole system and see, is the government going in the right direction? Let me say it can do much, much better.
Right. And I'm sure you're keeping up with some of the developments in the polity. Most recently, you had a group of northern leaders, both in government and out of government, converge in Kaduna to talk about basically the state of the nation and the position of stakeholders about what's actually happening. And you had people like the NSA, for instance, a couple of governors here and there talk about how there is an exaggeration of what is wrong and an underappreciation of what is going right. Because the NSA says, listen, we're making headway when it comes to insecurity. Yes, we're not there yet, but there's a need to appreciate the gains that have been recorded. Governor Obasani says, listen, to the northern leaders who are making all this noise about marginalization and things like that, maybe we need to look into the mirror and see how northern leaders undermine the region itself. And this type of conversation leads people to beg the question, how united or divided is the North when it comes to the understanding of what the Tinubu administration is actually bringing to the table?
Again, my perspective is not how divided the North is, it's how divided the country is. This idea of pushing everything north, 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 I think is also contributing to the divisions in the country. And the government is guilty of that. I expected government officials to go there and say, oh, everything is right, everything is rosy, the governor is in power, the ministers are in power, and so on. They had been sent. But I think it was not a conversation as such. It was a government gathering to say what we are doing for you and you should do it. I was there. I was invited as an individual. I did not see any member of the National Assembly coming to talk about bills that were being passed in the National Assembly without much scrutiny. Bills about borrowing and so on, without accountability. What have you done with what we borrow? What happened to subsidies? And I have not seen any governor being brought to explain the humongous amount of resources they have been receiving as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy. What have they been doing with it? What has happened to primary education? What has happened to primary health? You know, where is the money? There is no doubt the government, and we see the figures, pumping a lot of money to the state governments, and of course, if it ever gets there, to the local governments. I think we need to also interrogate the subnational levels of government with result to that. Yeah, the federal government is right to feel that someone is unfair, and I'm one on that. But yes, I think we need to interrogate other levels of government. The legislature, the state governments, the local governments, they all have a responsibility to explain to us. To that extent, yes, the government is right. But, you know, the conversation in Kaduna, I think it was, I would rate it about 65% one-sided. One-sided in the sense of the government harding its appointees to sell its own programs to the people. I did not see a lot of ordinary attempt to reach ordinary persons in the street. They were all elites talking to elites. So it's a gang up of elites. Elites in government and elites maybe outside government. What happens to the common man? I didn't see much of that in that conversation. And of course, there was not a rigorous interrogation of the government officials. Those who asked questions were pre-selected. Mostly there was a panel discussion. It's the same people over the 2 days. Has anyone made an attempt, for example, to get an official of the Road Traffic Workers Union with their experience on fuel subsidy, their experience on insecurity on the road? I don't see that.
Was that a performance in your view?
I think it was largely a performance, in my point of view, from someone who was there and observed everything.
Who was the audience then? Who was the audience? Who were they performing for? Mostly
elite by like themselves. They are, in my opinion, if you were there and listened to the little that there was of clapping and applause, you find that it was, if we are honest to ourselves, the applause were severely subdued. So it was a respectful audience. Right. And in fact, for that matter, there were rules circulated on how people should behave. And that people who don't behave will be sent out. Come on, this is not a conversation. It was an organized event.
Okay.
You know, there was no free flow. Allow people to vent their anger. And so, of course, you do it. But when you put a threat there, you know, don't move about, don't shout, you will be escorted out. That in itself is a threat. It's a gang up against the crowd that was there. So the ganging up is on both sides. And so on. And hey, this is political. We are in the era of politics. So you should expect anything.
Did that, in your view, signpost the problem then about the kind of conversations we are having about governance?
Yes, I think so. In my opinion, like I started saying, all these things about 2027, with focus on 2027, is chasing shadows. In the long run, a government is elected and re-elected based on its performance and the people's experience and perception of what has been going on. It's not what you sell to them. People are not as silly or people are not as stupid as we think, we elites. They are able to discern. This is where we are. This is where we are now. We are looking to the future, some with fear. And I think there is more about looking to the future with fear. And Also, you are having a conversation on governance. And then you are treating just one part of the country, saying northern. So you are actually contributing to the divisiveness. And I've seen reactions, even within the north. I have seen reactions in the newspaper that, oh yeah, we are not invited. They don't think we are part of the north. And this is because the government itself, is promoting this divisiveness by isolating people, like I said. If you go to Kaduna market, you will find people from all parts of Nigeria that would have loved to contribute to that conversation, but because probably they are not considered by the government as northerners. This is my disappointment. We tend to compartmentalize people and think and try to push their mind towards that compartment. And so they tend to think just within themselves. They don't get a chance to look at the wider picture. And I think government should desist from this kind of thing. Desist from treating parts of the country that needs to be assuaged and so on, that needs to be convinced, whose support must be demanded and not courted. I mean, this is personal. This is what I saw. And I have nothing against the attempt, but I think it could have been much better organized.
Right. And looking at the political arena, a couple of developments most recently that has got everybody talking is that everybody's trying to position themselves as the best candidate, obviously.
Yeah.
Classic politics, right? But one particular issue that has become quite the conversation is around the latest offer by one of the leading political figures. Peter Obi's tweet a couple of days ago suggested that, listen, take my word to the bank. I will only serve one single term if voted into power in 2027, meaning there might not be a disruption to the quote-unquote unwritten power rotation between North and the South. What do you make of that offer? And what do you think that does to the conversation around where power goes to next?
I was very disappointed to hear that because, listen, as I have said elsewhere, this so-called shifting of power from the North to the South is not a constitutional provision. I can say I will rule well and you can take me to court. But if I say I will rule once and I change my mind, it's not a constitutional requirement. The power shift is not. What people are looking for is the entrenchment of the principle of good governance. Now he makes the promise. He was not the first to have done that in our history. Late Muhammadu Buhari in the build-up to 2015 did so. What happened? He stood for election again. And so, I mean, Chief Obi can make the promises, but you cannot take him to court. You cannot hold him to that. In fact, it may turn out to be to your detriment for him to keep. Suppose he is elected. Suppose he does a very good job. Is he denying Nigerians a chance to vote him again? If they think he has done a good job. To me, it's unnecessary. I think it's another, quote unquote, in a mild form, it's another scam being thrown at the people. I mean, in whose interest are we alternating power from the North to the South? You see, all these agitations are coming because there is no entrenchment of the principles of good governance. So the people are being sold certain dummies on the basis of primordial sentiments. He's from our area, we're the same religion, we're the same tribe, we're the same region, we're the same this. All these things, in my opinion, are happening because there is no good governance. If there is good governance, a good product sells itself. It doesn't need advertisement.
So you don't believe in zoning?
No, I don't. If there will be the entrenchment of the principles of good governance, anti-corruption, serving the people, and so on. If there is, I think most people do not bother. So when you go to the market to buy a piece of yam, does it matter whether the yam is Jalingo yam, if you have the money, or it is from Benue, or in fact, it's a special type of yam being grown in Chafe area of Zamfara State, if not for the insecurity. Nobody asks for the origin of the palm oil. Nobody asks for the origin of the groundnut oil. And so let's face it, there is the substance. Saying zoning or one term, they are selling shadows to us. What we need is good governance.
But I'm sure, Prof, you believe in political inclusion and representation.
Oh, definitely. I talked about equity, you see. And equity will come out of the principles of good governance. Once we have that on ground. Nobody is accounting for the humongous amount of money saved, quote unquote, from the removal of subsidy. And then you ask the question, if in fact we were subsidizing and we have stopped, why are we borrowing? If in fact state, subnational levels, states and local governments are receiving more and more money, why is our standard of living dropping? Who is accounting for those? You know, once these are accounted for, once there are a lot of people, in my opinion, will not mind who is governing.
Right. An old political player thought to have hung his boot is back in the news again. Former President Goodluck Jonathan is speculated to probably be in the mix for consideration, whether it's on the platform of the PDP. We also understand that some of his people are speaking to the coalition. Does that interest you?
Yeah, it interests me in the sense that I ask the question, why? What did you forget that you want to? I mean, there is this idea of someone asking the late Sheikh Yaradua what he was going to Northern Barracks to this thing. But again, it's a legitimate aspiration. He's a citizen, first and foremost, of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And he is above 18 and eligible to contest. The question I will ask is, great. Does he realize, or do his supporters realize, that the situation is not the same as when he came to power, that a lot of water has passed under the bridge, in the manner of speaking? What we need is somebody who will now take a stock of our situation, see what has happened, and offer alternatives. Convince me that they are going to make a difference, that we are not just going to see a change in personnel. I think in this country we should pass that stage. We sold the Muslim ticket in 2023. Does it surprise you that not many people are talking about it now? Because the allure disappeared within a very short time. And I'm sure you talk to ordinary people, they will tell you that, look, that is not the issue. How do you change my life? I have seen people asking that, if you are doing well, please return the country to how Buhari left it, you know. And people are saying, well, okay, you know, at some point he said, when I leave power, people are going to yearn for me. Is this what he meant? Or that this government said they will continue from where Buhari left? To come back to Jonathan, if indeed he can convince people, and some of the conditions I see contradicts this intention to this. I read in the news that, what they want is automatic ticket without primaries. And I asked, what are you afraid of? If in fact you are rebranding yourself, that, you know, it should be automatic. Then we are not practicing democracy. We are practicing selectivity and not electability.
And you look at the field, Prof. Does anybody, without naming names, does anybody give you a sense of hope?
Right now, no. I need to see a lot more. I need to be convinced more. I am not impressed by a collection of individuals, whoever they are, ganging up to say they must overthrow the government. Good and fine. What are you going to place in front? I mean, you come to my house, you tell me the food I'm eating is not good enough and so on. And I will ask you, okay, look at my situation. Look at my socio-economic condition. What alternative are you offering? How will it satisfy my wants, my needs, not even wants, and so on? Unless you do that, you will be, I would say you are just talking. So I will not say I'm not inspired. I am yet to be convinced that there is going to be a difference.
Right. And some would say, looking at our political history, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been loyal, supportive of the North for well over 1.5 decades, so to say. As far as Nigerian elections are concerned, his support for Atiku in 2007 is well documented. His support for Nuribadu in 2011, well documented. His support for Buhari and the formation of the APC, to be honest, was quite critical.
Yeah.
And subsequent election in 2019. That he doesn't deserve what he's getting from the North.
What is he getting? I'm yet to be convinced that he's getting a flack from the North.
Some would say he has become a punching bag.
Everybody was a punching bag when they ran for office. Jonathan was a punching bag. Okay? Tinubu would be a punching bag. Obasanjo was a punching bag. You remember all the noise leading up to the rejection of the third term bill. It's all about punching bags. Hey, my question is, what do you expect? Okay, let me go by your logic. He has supported so many people, but you are talking of individuals. What has been there in his outreach for the common man? Yeah, you can gather friends, give them positions, give them resources and so on, but at the end of the day, are you going to be able to say, I did this and this for the common person in the north or in any part of Nigeria for that matter? I mean, let's go back again in history. Oh, he was the president. Bola Tinubu was touted as the one who transformed Lagos. But even at that time, he was being criticized. Now it's not transformation. It's all about collecting taxes, 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 and so on. At the end of the day, what do you leave on ground for the common man in the north or anywhere in Nigeria? Again, I am personally of the opinion that all these are hoodwinking and selling shadows instead of substance.
Right. And finally, before we wrap things up, Prof, what would your advice be to Nigerians who are either confused or unsure about what to make of the political noise right now in the polity, all against the backdrop of what's to come in 2027?
Look at the people making the noise. Look at their antecedents. Ask yourself, what have they left on ground for the common man? What have they contributed to the deterioration, or if any, improvement in the lives of the people? Hey, look, we have, let's say, over 225 million people. What is our standard of living currently? How has it been in the past? And so on. So I will advise the public not to be confused. You can listen to all the noise, but you have to keep your head above water. Look beyond the shadows. Ask hard, tough questions as, what do you have different? How are you going to make a difference in the lives, in my life, the life of my children? What legacy are you leaving for my grandchildren? Are you going to keep borrowing so that they keep paying? What lessons have we learned from the experience of countries in other parts of the world, and so on? I will advise the public to be very, very critical of the politics of identity, politics of primordial baggage, and so on. At the end of the day, they don't count when you go to the hospital. They don't count when you can't send your children to school. They don't count when your children wake up, go to the school, the teachers are on strike. When you go to the hospital and you can't afford to see the doctor, you can't afford drugs, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, let's look objective as much as we can at our objective rather than the subjective conditions we live in.
Prof, as always, thank you so much for the analysis.
It's my pleasure.
You very much for stopping
Thank you
by
for
this evening.
inviting me.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you most kindly for joining us on Daily Politics. We'll be back tomorrow live at 8 p.m. Until next time, I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you for watching. We'll see you soon.